The last couple of years have been a dark time for us, marked by trauma, loss, fear, and depression. However, I'm surprised to find that some light has come out of this too, some good. Granted, some personal and professional experiences have felt like a trial by fire, but I feel that I've become a better parent, family member, colleague, and educator. I was able to find some light in the darkness. Recently, in rare moments of quiet reflection, I've thought about how I was able to find that light and thrive in ways I hadn't previously imagined. If I'm honest with myself, the truth is in my roots and formative early life experiences. The answer is that from a young age, I've been conditioned to seek out and cling to even the slightest shred of positivity as a mode of survival day to day. The answer lies in experiences that I've never spoken of publicly, and in the spirit of full disclosure, I do so now with trepidation. By sharing parts of my story, I hope to convey that we all share common ground. We face and overcome adversity every day in battles great and small. We're all capable of finding the light in the darkness, and we have it in us to be a source of light as well. Picture this. It's the tail end of 1995, and I'm looking forward to my 14th birthday amidst the usual adolescent ups and downs. That's when we notice them. A small raised bump on my dad's shoulder and another on his cheek. It's probably nothing. Transition to, maybe it's the flu, get some rest and fluids, to, I'm sorry, it's terminal cancer in a matter of days. I faked illness to tag along to the biopsy appointments. I cried into the open fridge when I looked up melanoma in the dictionary. I feigned ignorance when my dad asked me why I was crying alone in the night. Someone had suddenly flipped a switch, and my parents, my younger sister, and I were plunged into the darkness. Even so, my dad was a source of light, contemplating my blue baseball cap in optimistic preparation for chemotherapy, not knowing that he wouldn't need it because he wouldn't make it that far. Those days are colored by the cold sterility of hospital wards, the fluorescent lights constantly buzzing overhead, yet not shining down on us in the least. Those were difficult days. It's funny, but over a quarter century later, the strangest things are etched into my memory. The smells, the sound of oxygen bubbling, Alanis Morissette's Ironic playing on the radio, Elvis Stoico figure skating in his prime, and of course, 90s fashion. I remember my black backpack with the neatly arranged pens and highlighters as vividly as the man rapidly deteriorating in the hospital bed, becoming unrecognizable by the hour, let alone the day. How do you get through something like that? I often think back and wonder. What I recognize is my parents seeking the positivity to keep our heads above water. I witnessed my mom, Samia, dressing well every day and ensuring we did too. I saw my dad, Mohammed, thank the nurses and doctors in appreciation of their efforts, despite the growing futility of his situation. We laughed. We watched Ellen together on the hospital TV. My younger sister Dina and I helped ourselves to pop, Jell-O cups, and little individually wrapped cheese, likely to the chagrin of the nurses turning a blind eye. I mean, fart sounds still made us laugh. So there was good to be experienced in the midst of that chaos. But some days it was hard to find the positivity. I'm ashamed to admit that I became oddly fixated on school, likely as an escape. My school principal himself phoned to tell me to relax and focus on family. There were moments of intense bitterness. At 14, I had no concept of kidney function, but I was intuitively envious of the copious yellow urine that filled another patient's catheter bag compared to the minimal black tar that sat at the bottom of my father's. I burned with a sense of injustice, which sometimes bubbled up into uncharacteristic rage. One time I threw a textbook across the room, akin to sacrilege as a book lover. The cover tore off, and I immediately felt remorse. I remember the need to escape physically, running out into the cold February darkness in front of the hospital before reluctantly turning back, because where would I go alone at 14? To this day, I involuntarily cringe in hospitals. With that darkness inside me, I tried to shine some light. Toward the end, I sat at my dad's bedside and I childishly promised him to take care of my mom and sister, that he wasn't to worry. I made him cry in his semi-comatose state. By that point, he wasn't able to speak anymore, but I like to think they were tears of relief. Less than a day later, the man was cut down in his prime, only a handful of years older than I am at this very moment, which is confronting if I ever let my mind go there. If I thought his 3 weeks from diagnosis to death was a lifetime's lesson in darkness, I'd be in for a rude surprise. What happened next was a blur. One moment, I pressed my face into the sympathetic belly of a family friend. The next, we're at the wind-whipped gravesite after a harrowing ride in a friend's beat-up minivan with the wonky speedometer needle. There were so many people there, yet it remains one of the loneliest moments of my life. Everyone drowning in their own grief, a community in shock along with us. Can you imagine how oddly and awkwardly I thanked people for coming to the funeral? When we got home, my mom, sister, and I formed a new family unit, trying to keep ourselves together in a garden of sympathy cards and flowers that would soon die and crumble around us in the deafening silence. As I struggled to cope with what I perceived as others' pity, I felt certain this was as bad, as dark as life could ever get. But we got up. We put one foot in front of the other, as they say. In fact, there was no choice but to find some shred of light, any light, in order to get by. Of course, this took some people by surprise. Imagine my school principal's confusion at seeing me sitting alone in front of my homeroom early Monday morning after having buried my father the Friday before. But I enjoyed my lessons. I laughed with friends. I indulged in treats. Every day was a challenge, but we overcame it by focusing on some positive aspect, whether that was enjoying the accomplishment of work, appreciating nice weather, beautiful music, or the simple fact that we were alive and breathing that day. It provided a smile, some hope, a little comfort in the dark times. Since then, I've experienced many other dark times. I've been on the receiving end of bullying before Pink Shirt Day was celebrated. I've experienced racism and misogyny as a woman of color in a male-dominated field, not to mention moments of immense discomfort before Me Too became a part of our consciousness. I've survived and thrived despite toxic people and environments. My road to motherhood was not smooth and effortless, with psychological effects that linger and dog me to this day. I've endured personal and professional rejection. I've been misunderstood, underestimated, and I've learned to accept that there are some people I just can't please. I bear witness to things that are still too raw to speak of. But in my lived experience so far, there's always been one constant. For me, finding light in the darkness is not an option. It's a way of life. It sustains me and helps me sustain others. Fast forward to March 2020. Rumors swirled that we might switch to online teaching and learning. I didn't believe it at the time, but it turned out to be true. We were all plunged into the darkness. Desperate emails started rolling in. Students were asking me for reassurance, but what could I do in the midst of my own fear and uncertainty? Instinctively, I pulled from those experiences, from those old wounds, those things that I hated in the moment, but which undoubtedly shaped who I am today. It became critical to reach out to students to provide a sense of stability in the chaos and help them find the positive. What was initially intended to be a two-dimensional email became a video we called Checking In, the very first video we produced. Now, as an introvert by nature, I had completely rejected the idea of appearing on camera, but my husband Rami, a fellow educator, insisted this was necessary to truly connect. So he set up the camera and tripod, and I dressed as I normally would for class. Those first days staring into the lens in an empty room were immensely uncomfortable. The lighting wasn't quite right, my posture was bad, and my nervous speech betrayed my inexperience. But the message was from the heart. I asked students what I've been asking myself for decades. What's the thing that's truly important? What's the intention? What's the good in this situation? It worked like a charm. That video refocused all of us. We recognized light in the form of the means to remain connected in the midst of catastrophe, not to mention the means to continue developing our skills and expanding our minds. Sometimes it's less about seeking the light and more about letting light in when it's presented to us. Allowing someone else's light to shine helps us, but it also alleviates their darkness. I accepted light in the form of encouragement from family, friends, and students. I accepted much needed help from Rami to produce over 300 videos, thanks to his self-taught videography skills. I learned to practice interdependence as opposed to solitary heroism. Light and positivity also took the form of rediscovering our toys with my son Tamer and incorporating them to add humor and personality to our educational videos. In those dark days, we had fun, we laughed, we stayed up at all hours to record and perfect videos, rushing to have them ready for the next day. Light for me also took the form of the time and space to consider what was really important to me as an educator. I let go of high-stakes, high-stress assessments in favor of alternatives which provided more meaningful opportunities for students to learn. And to my surprise and delight, we all thrived. I've shared some big examples today, but the undeniable truth is that we find and share light all the time. In my view, the darkness is always there, but we find the positive and we overcome adversity many times over every day. Isn't it about time that we give ourselves credit for this and celebrate these accomplishments? Because darkness is simply a part of the human condition. It's up to us to determine whether that darkness remains pervasive or is merely a passing shadow. Making the choice to let someone merge in traffic could restore their faith in humanity. Forgiving a mistake or giving someone the benefit of the doubt could inspire an opportunity for growth. Making the choice to be flexible and accommodating could reveal the deep understanding that we each carry a unique burden that's heavier to bear on some days compared to others. We are all recipients and sources of light in the darkness. Thank you.